But if Jordan Lawlar comes out in 2025, has a really great start to the season, well, this is a big league ready shortstop.
Let's talk about the Arizona Diamondbacks and their top prospect in the organization. It's a name that's been around for a minute. It's Jordan Lawlar, and it's your prospect profile. And it is Scott Braun along with Baseball America's JJ Cooper and Geoff Pontes. So where are we at? We've heard Jordan Lawlar's name for a minute. We haven't seen him blossom in the big leagues yet. Geoff, do you think it's going to happen?
Yeah, I think if it's going to happen, it's probably going to be, this year, possibly next. I would imagine, the big question has really been health over the last year or so. He did have shoulder surgery right after signing, but did put together a couple of decent years. Of course, got up to the major leagues in 2023, and then this year dealt with a hamstring injury as well as a thumb injury, which really, more or less cooked him for almost the entirety of the season. I think when you look at the player, he can play in multiple spots in the infield, probably most at home at shortstop. He's got a good arm there. Fairly rangy. I don't think he's somebody that's going to be like a 70 defender or a plus defender at shortstop, but could be an above average everyday defensive shortstop. Gets on base. I think the power at times was probably a little bit overbilled. He can hit for power, but it's probably more like high teens power than it is like the 20 plus to even 30 that you might have heard at draft time. He's a good runner. Straight line speed isn't crazy, but enough that he can steal probably 20, 25 bags, especially in that lineup. And, as aggressive as the Diamondbacks can be in terms of base stealing. So I think he's a really good all around player. The top prospects certainly in that system. It's just a matter of, do they move on from Perdomo? Do they, potentially move Suarez off of third base and he ends up at third base? There's multiple ways that he could sort of fit into the Diamondbacks this season. But the big question with him has been health, and he's dealt with a litany of injuries throughout his professional career.
His opportunity coming into 2024 might have been a little bit better than it sits right now. Geoff mentioned Perdomo. Perdomo had a pretty solid year and did enough to where if Jordan Lawlar kind of came out of 23, he was up with the big league club at the end of the year. And you're kind of thinking, okay, 2024 will be the year that the first round pick, the top prospect in the organization, takes that step forward, kind of nails down the shortstop job and kind of holds that for the rest of the decade, really. And here we are a year later, and Lawlar's coming off of his second significant injury as a pro. Had missed basically the whole year. He did get to play in the Dominican Winter League a little bit. Didn't set the world on fire there, but did get to play, which is good. Kind of shakes off some rust before spring training. But we are sitting here going into the 2025 season saying he fits in the mix where a year ago kind of thought he was going to be the guy. So I do think that the 2025 season is going to be very important for Jordan Lawlar to, one, just show he can stay healthy, because that's been a problem so far, and two, kind of hopefully kind of get the opportunity and take and claim it to say like, hey, I'm the shortstop in Arizona. I'm the shortstop for this team for the rest of the decade. Still looks like long-term that's his job to hold, but it is a little bit of a tougher task maybe now than it was even coming out of last year. And the thing that just kind of really does jump out at this is you don't want to forget that he's really young still. He will turn 23 right around the All-Star break. So I don't want to make this sound like this is a 26-year-old, 27-year-old who hasn't gotten established in the big leagues and time is running out. This guy's not really much older than some of the college draftees we'll see in the upcoming draft. So there's still time on his side. Jordan Lawlar could still be a very impactful, a very well-rounded big leaguer. It just does mean that, man, you just want to see him be healthy for a full year. And it hasn't been like one injury. It's been kind of a variety of injuries that have really derailed him so far.
It's funny, it gets me thinking, Geoff, about how much or how quickly we move on these days, right? Jordan Lawlar was really, really heavily discussed for a year or two, and then you see these struggles and these injuries, and he becomes an afterthought in terms of the national conversation of prospects. In fairness, Jackson Chourio wasn't talked about much after May when he was struggling in the first month, and then people had to circle back around and be like, oh wait, hold on, he's a baby and now he looks like a star already. But anyway, to get to my next point, do you think that the Arizona Diamondbacks are in an okay spot from an organizational standpoint, or should we be concerned that this is still the guy that's kind of leading the pack here among their best prospects.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a good major league roster. Obviously they went on a little bit of a late run last year. They do have some kind of a pair of interesting prospects at the top in Lawlar, and then Demetrio Crisantes, who's in the midst of chasing Mookie Betts' minor league on base streak record that will continue into 2025 if he continues to get on base over the first 10 or 12 games. I think there's some interesting players they added to the system this year, and guys like Slade Caldwell and Ryan Waldschmidt. Adrian Del Castillo certainly had sort of a breakout last year, and I think kind of reestablished himself, particularly as a hitter. But there's some other players in this system that really haven't taken big steps forward. Drew Jones is obviously kind of the prime suspect, among those players. Tommy Troy, a highly touted, positional player out of Stanford, infielder. I don't want to say necessarily middle infielder because we'll see where he ends up landing. But in a lot of ways, Troy a couple years ago was getting compared to Matt Shaw as like when he was in the Cape Cod League, which player is better? And I think, Shaw has certainly established himself as a professional, and Troy's sort of done the opposite. So there's kind of been a lot of underperforming picks here. I thought they had a pretty good draft in 2024, so we'll see where that takes them. And they haven't had any huge hits in the international market of late either.
The thing I will say, though, this also does provide an opportunity for the Diamondbacks. Now, to give kind of the rose-colored glasses version of this, Jordan Lawlar is still one of the better prospects in the game. He's still near the top of our top 100. And he's kind of, as Scott said, he's kind of faded from the conversation because he's really missed a whole year, kind of disappeared from kind of view as he rehabbed and tried to get back on the field. But if Jordan Lawlar comes out in 2025, off in AAA, and has a really great start to the season, well, this is a big league ready shortstop, which gives the D-backs at that point, they can really say, hey, we got the depth that this provides because we have 5 guys really for 4 spots in the infield. Or they could also look at it and say, hey, whether it's Perdomo, whether it's Lawlar, whether it's Ketel Marte, who's been great for them. There could be a potential move down the road here where you say, okay, there's a lot of depth here. There's a lot of opportunity. And for a team that was in the World Series 2 years ago, that's not a terrible thing. That this is kind of a potential opportunity where they may have 2 guys who can handle the job, where 2 years ago it was like the question was, do they have 1? So that to me is kind of something to be interesting to watch in 2025. Is does Lawlar's potential reemergence kind of create both a challenge for the Diamondbacks, but also an opportunity? Because he already has hit in AAA. It's not something he needs to shake off some rust. It's no problem for him to spend a little bit of time down there, but he probably doesn't need a full season in AAA just to get of additional seasoning. And if that's the case, at some point, they're going to have some decisions to make.
I mean, I remember now 2 years ago or 2 seasons ago, chatting with Jordan Lawlar during media day heading into the World Series, right? Obviously he wasn't, a factor, a guy for Arizona at that time, but we were like, damn, this team's in the World Series. And Jordan Lawlar is one of the best prospects at the time in baseball. And just imagine if he blossoms and becomes a star for this team next season, which was this past season, which obviously had the injuries, but it is a good sign for Arizona. Plus, they did damage in the offseason by adding someone like Corbin Burns to the big league roster. So we'll see if Lawlar can be an above average performer for this team and cause some good problems like JJ's talking about. We're going over every single top prospect organization by organization. So swing back here to the Baseball America channel for more of these.